From Wall Street to the Metroplex, this is 1160 AM KVCE, Dallas-Fort Worth's Business Authority.
I do want to welcome in really early on right now because there's a lot of questions out there and a lot of excitement. Joining us as a special guest today on our show to tackle various different legal questions and procedures out there facing our service members today and very specific service-related topics. I'm joined with me a former Navy Lieutenant Commander, Brian Bouffard, who is also a judge advocate attorney nationwide or worldwide, correct? You're a global judge advocate attorney. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're here, join us on our show. Brian, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you taking the time to come out here and carry this conversation and join us over here.
Honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, Brian, now you served in the Navy and in the Marine Corps, is that correct?
Yes, I'm a former Navy officer, but I did all my active duty out at Camp Pendleton with the Marine Corps.
Outstanding.
So that's kind of where I grew up as
That's
a
1st Marine Division, correct?
First MARDIV is out there. 1 MEF is out there.
Yep.
I was with the 1st Force Service Support Group, which is now the 1st Marine Logistics Group. They renamed it after I left.
Excellent. You know what? That's always the case. You know, someone has to title something to get a good bullet point on an OER.
Some general has to have their legacy. Yeah.
Exactly. It never fails. Same thing, just different name.
Yep.
You know, well, Brian, one of the things that we were talking about prior to the show, and this is really a hot button topic for a lot of folks over there, is the situation currently right now. I don't know if you want to call it unfolding, but, you know, it's constantly in the news. It's a very sensitive subject, is Sergeant Bo Burdog and his release.
Right.
Share with us a little bit about your thoughts of what exactly is going on. I know there's a 2-star general investigating to find out, was he a deserter or was he AWOL? Actually, want to be a great question to really start this off with. Can you give us the definition of what a deserter means versus if he was AWOL, you know, absence without leave?
Sure. AWOL, or unauthorized absence, is Article 86 of the UCMJ, and essentially it just means you're not where you're supposed to be, okay? And that can be for all sorts of reasons. You know, you have a formation Saturday morning, you decide you'd rather sleep in, so you don't show up, and, you know, you show up later and they grouch at you. Well, you know, technically you've committed a violation of Article 86.
Correct.
But the key there is that there's nothing that suggests that you plan to stay away forever.
Right.
Which is the distinction between desertion, Article 85, and unauthorized absence. What it appears that Sergeant Bergdahl, or then PFC Bergdahl, may have done is gone UA, or gone AWOL, but with the intent to remain away permanently. And if the government can prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, then they can make out a case of desertion instead of just AWOL.
All right. Now, we hear reports, and granted, I cannot emphasize this enough, a lot of this is still speculation or individuals who may or may not have firsthand knowledge of it, you know, and I'm referring to mainly the members of his squad, platoon, and company that have been very openly critical about Sergeant Bergdahl. And, you know, there was a letter, and I'm not sure whether that letter has been you know, authenticated or not, that he wrote that he planned on leaving because of lack of leadership. And are you familiar with the letter that I'm referring to?
I'm familiar with the fact that it supposedly exists. I have not seen it. I would certainly like to.
And I haven't either. I just know, you know, what I see out there in social media, and which is generating a lot of this, you know, interest and, of course, you know, very bad taste in a lot of veterans' mouths about whether he deserted his fellow brothers in arms or not. And, you know, as a combat veteran who's been overseas, you know, yeah, I could very easily see how that would piss me off. You know, I would be extremely, you know, upset at one of my service members, one of my soldiers under my command, getting up and leaving. But I do understand, and we were talking about this earlier, that does happen. It happens more often than people would really like to admit. Soldiers do leave. Just like in your home, does a teenager sneak out of the house, you know, in the middle of the night? It does happen. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, my initial thoughts were not so much as a defense attorney, which is what I am, but it was just as a former service member and as a citizen. And my initial response was, wow, we've sent this message now to our enemy that if you capture one of our guys, we're going to give you back 5 of your guys in return. And so my initial thoughts were, you know, that's creating a larger danger, I think, to our folks still
And
out
I'm
there.
glad you mentioned that, and that was also another thing you and I were talking about earlier is when you look at Sergeant Burdahl, at the time of his capture, the military value in the sense of his technical expertise and knowledge was very, very minimal. You know,
Right, we're talking
really,
about PFC.
Exactly. He really couldn't provide real tactical, intelligent information to defeat an entire military. But, and you brought up an excellent point earlier, is could he provide key level knowledge to them of how to get onto the base,
Sure.
how to cause harm to another American service member, whether it means they killed just one. In my opinion, one American service member getting killed is one too many. But, you know,
Right. Where's the platoon leader's tent? I mean, even intel just like that
could be very, very valuable.
You bet.
The question, you know, on there.
And in Major White, I want to say also, I think didn't the Americans go looking for him, and we did lose a few Americans even just with him walking away.
I've heard those same reports, and that would certainly tend to, upset a reasonable person as well. That, this guy, if he did go off just for no reason on his own, he would have to know that we'd send people looking for him, and some of those people were injured, and some of those people may have been killed.
Absolutely. And then I think something that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, actually had the opportunity to meet him a few months ago. He did say an interesting point, of course, and the questions about the particular soldier's conduct are separate from our effort to recover any U.S. service member in enemy captivity, which, of course, I agree. So whether it, either way, we're going to go in and rescue our military soldier from the situation of being held captive.
Sure.
But then I believe what most Americans are extremely frustrated is how we gave 5 of our terrorists for then someone who is potentially someone who was a deserter and was not proud to be American by the letters he was writing home to his family.
Right.
Excellent. Well, we're going to keep on talking about Sergeant Burdahl and other military hot button legal issues. You're listening to Kilroy's Conversation on KVCE AM 1160, Dallas Fort Worth Business Authority. XO, take us out. We'll be right back with some more Kilroy's Conversation. Hoorah! All righty, well, now let's get back to Brian over here and all the different topics that we're going over here. Brian, during the break, we were talking a little bit about, Sergeant Burdahl and, his release due to 5 high-level, high-ranking Taliban or former Taliban / Al-Qaeda operatives in exchange for Sergeant Burdahl. Now, we know this, and we were talking about this during the break. No matter what happens, whether he is convicted of desertion or unauthorized leave or whatever it is that happened to Sergeant Burdahl, I would say it is a fair statement to say that his military career is probably over.
Yeah,
he is going to either be medically discharged. He's not going to. He's going to go back to Idaho or wherever it is that he chooses to live, and he will probably never serve any farther than he is serving right now.
Yeah, unless something shocking happens.
Exactly. It's probably a fair statement to say his career is seen its end. Right, wrong, and different, that's to be determined later, but his career is coming to an end. As opposed to the 5 individuals that we released. It is very plausible, very probable, and I'd say likely that these men, whether they directly or indirectly, will affect American lives, an American way of doing things, an American interest. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, I do. I mean, I think it's difficult to account for an enemy that is motivated.
Okay.
I think from a religious perspective, the way that Muslim terrorists are.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that we could trust the government and that they would decide only to release people that they think really, there's no chance they're going to work against us again. But I think that's kind of ridiculous.
It's wishful thinking. Yeah, Cammy?
And from what I understand, they were the top operatives.
They're senior commanders.
It's just so, really, from my point of view as being an American citizen, that's outrageous and that's dangerous. And I don't understand why that took place.
Right. Again, I'm sure that some calculus somewhere was done at White House levels, but again, can we really trust anything that we hear along those lines? Probably not.
Right.
Probably not.
And like I said, and back to this, it's like the level of intelligence that Sergeant Burdahl could provide the enemy is scary to think that, okay, for where he was in his military career at that time of capture, the amount of usable information the Taliban can receive, while minimal, still could cause catastrophic losses, to American soldiers. Yeah. What happens when the value of one of our special operators gets captured, or a senior level ranking either NCO or officer gets captured? What kind of trade value are they worth in terrorist eyes? And have we set a precedence right now? And I'd love to get your thought on this. Have we set a precedence for dealing with terrorists?
Well, President Obama has said that he wants a negotiated settlement with the Taliban. So if you accept that the Taliban are a bunch of terrorists, then we do negotiate with terrorists as a matter of fact. Whether we should or not is a different question.
Well, how I feel about that, Major White, is I feel like this presidency has set that precedence, but I think when we have in someone new in office, it'll go back to how we typically handle the situation, is that we do not negotiate with terrorists to keep America and our interests safe.
I would just think that from the perspective of what did Bergdahl know and how important was it to get him out here now in 2014, he left in 2009.
Correct.
We're not talking about them capturing a colonel or a brigadier general who probably knows a whole lot of stuff. Exactly. Strategically speaking. I would tend to imagine that whatever they were going to get out of Bergdahl, they probably got out of him fairly quickly.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that.
So now in 2014, I think it does become almost a pure issue of we don't leave anybody behind. We want to bring back our people, and we can debate about the merits of trading not only just 5 Taliban members, but those particular 5 Taliban members. We can debate that, and I think at the end of the day, that will prove to have been either a good or a bad choice based on whether or not we can ever prove that those 5 people got out of Gitmo and ended up harming Americans.
Right. No, that's fair point. We're going to continue talking about that. On the line right now, we have a guest calling in from the border. Charles, are you on?
Yes.
Charles, how are you doing over there?
Doing good.
Charles, we're so glad you're with us. Please share with us what you're seeing down at the border.
Well, we left early Friday morning, drove down, Kirk Lonnius and I, drove down and took our time doing a little sightseeing along the way, some of the Texas back roads, and went through to visit with a county sheriff who is a constitutional sheriff. Her name is Pamela Elliott. She is the sheriff of Edwards County, Texas. Not a former Marine. She is a Marine and served 8 years as a Marine. And when she got out of the Marine Corps, active duty, an Army person kept insisting that she join the Army and become military police. So after resisting for quite a while, then she later agreed and joined the Army and got some experience as a military police. Served, I think, a couple of duties over in Afghanistan, represented us well, and then was contacted by some people in Edwards County to if they could use her name and run her for county sheriff, and they did, and she overwhelmingly got elected and been serving since. She's making us a great county sheriff.
Well, I see her up on your Facebook, and was she able to show you around and talk to you about what's happening on the border right now?
Yes, with great detail. She is the sheriff of the 9th largest county in Texas, Edwards County. She says that when they come across the border, some of them, quite a few of them actually, do make it to her county, but many of them sadly die in the process because they're not able to resist the heat. And so she gets quite a few calls in different parts of the county to go out and they service dead bodies and
Charles,
bring them in.
Got a question over here. Obviously, it's a big issue. It's a hot button topic right now. Governor Perry calling for upwards of, I believe, 1,000 troops to help secure the border over there. Is the issue with the border crossing right now, from what you all see? I mean, obviously there's a humanitarian aspect to this, you know, and of course securing our borders is the other aspect to it. From the humanitarian standpoint, do you see from your vantage point over there a need to be having more logistics / medical support folks over there to help treat some of these folks coming over? I mean, you just brought up a great point. The journey from Mexico or wherever it is that they're coming from, but we'll have to use Mexico because that's the border that they're actually crossing over on geographically. Are the health concerns of these individuals coming in over outweighing the security concerns? Or which is the greater concern from your vantage point right now? Because obviously there is a lot of concern of these individuals being smuggled in, whether on trucks to heat, and you just bring up a great point. Where is the concern that you see from your vantage point over there?
Number one, our borders are not secure. They're very porous. I appreciate Governor Perry. I support him in every way. I think he's making us a great governor. In my opinion, I think we need more than 1,000 reservists called up. I think to do the job right, we would probably need 5,000. And secure the border first, prevent violators from crossing into Texas and the USA, creating havoc and harm, because many of these from Central America are and have been related to and members of gangs from Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala. I understand from reading and hearing from another sheriff down on the border that Guatemala and Mexico have made a commitment together to invade. So while
Charles,
it is yes.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, but I want you to hang on just for a minute. We're going to get back to you in just 3 minutes. We're going to take a quick break. But when we turn back, we're going to have with you. We've got Brian Bouffard, Cami Dean, and Mark Warner. We're going to continue talking about this and other topics with a KVCE conversation. You're listening to KVCE AM 1160, Dallas Fort Worth Business Authority. XO takes out, and we'll be right back with more KVCE conversation. Hoorah! All right, so during the break, we had Charles Lingfeld on the line, and we were talking a little bit about the immigration system situation that's going on right now and what kind of aid our troops need to be potentially providing and potential issues that may face our troops. And I know we don't want to really dive too much into the Posse Comitatus Act if that does eventually happen, whether it does or not, but putting our troops down there to serve in a humanitarian aspect, providing medical supplies, water issues, food, things like that for these individuals coming over is really a sign of what we do as our military and how we can in some ways protect our border. But at the same time, Cami, we were talking during the break, sending a strong message to the people that are really making out of the thing are your snakeheads and your coyote runners that are taking these young children over and families to the border. We need to put our troops there to build a war and barrier and say, no, this isn't going to happen. And maybe even send a message to the families that are thinking of bringing these troops over, say, hey, why are you going to risk your life savings, your family, your health, all that to come over just to be sent right back over?
And yes, and obviously as a mom, I look at this and, it upsets me that the coyotes are, taking $12,000, so a life savings of a family, say in Mexico, and then they hand their child and their life savings, and that child potentially could be raped, murdered, die of heat exhaustion, and then potentially just sent right back. And so to me, I think the president should stand up and make a strong, tell everyone around the world that they can't send their children here. And now, do I understand we have to help and aid other countries around the world and children? Well, of course, and also our churches do continually. But the way this is going about, it's illegal, it's wrong. The only person winning in this is the coyotes, who obviously none of us want to help. So, yes, I appreciate you allowing me to share that, because I'm really upset about the situation. And what's happening on Texas is just going to really weigh on us for our schools and the hospitals. And, all of us as politicians are torn, and families and individuals how to handle it. We all obviously all love and care about children, but we can't do this as a nation, and we definitely can't continue to do so.
Yeah, and one of the things we got to look at is with our troops being over there, and Brian, please, share your thoughts on it, because I know we were talking about it in the break, is, there's legal means to enter our country. There are multiple legal means, and there's multiple legal ways with some of those folks that are coming over, through Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador. I mean, my family, I'm from El Salvador, my family ties are, and we entered the nation legally.
All right,
and there
we have
are
laws
ways,
on the books that...
Exactly. There are a million ways to do that, and we encourage those who are seeking a better life in our nation to do that. There are ways to do it. There are means, and there is a process. It's not always easy, but there is a process to do it. Our big concern and our big issue is these inhumane ways that these coyotes are using to get these families over here. It's not just illegal, it's dangerous. It is a dangerous journey that these folks are taking, and a lot of them don't make it. Just like you see, like how many times have we seen Coast Guard vessels over the, on Miami shores picking up vessels of Cuban and Dominican and Haitian refugees that are trying to sneak over that drowned or under some really horrible conditions. It is a huge, huge risk for these people.
Yes, and I believe some are riding on the top of trains. And then another thing that's a concern for all of us is the diseases they're carrying that that could really are contagious diseases and skin and bug issues and rashes. And to be honest with you, it was such a huge topic all week long that Obama was here in Texas and met with Governor Perry, but then wouldn't go to the border or to go see the children. And what really struck in my mind is he didn't go see the children because there's disease there. He could actually have caught something. And so that struck me as the reason he went to play pool is because he knew his life could be in danger. He could catch something.
And, and that, whatever that his reasons were, they were. The more important issue is what are we doing or where do we go forward from here? Brian, how do we, effectively engage over here to help out these people? Because let's face it, they're victims that are coming over. They really are. I think a important thing to look at it is these young families that are coming over to our nation, they're victims. They're not doing it to be criminal. The wide majority of it. Are there a percentage of them that have got bad intentions? Yes, there are that. But let's face it, we've got people in our own nation that have got bad intentions
Absolutely.
of doing things. The bottom line picture is these are victims, and we need to try to send a message to them that says, hey, if you really want to come over here and you really want to make a better life and future for you and your family, do it the right way, do it the safe way, because Charles hit it right on. Constantly these sheriffs are getting calls to go out there and pick up dead bodies from just basic dehydration. That's huge.
Yeah, I think demonizing these people, like you said, they're not, by and large, categorically bad people. They are victims, and I think that we, as a nation that should and does, we pride ourselves on being humanitarians. Well, this is where we need to show it.
And it's right there on our Statue of Liberty. Bring us your,
you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses. Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm not saying, let them come in without the proper paperwork. I mean, there's legal ways to do that.
Right.
Could we expedite those legal means? I'm sure we could. Everything government touches, is slow and burdened by bureaucracy, and this probably doesn't need to be as bad as it is. But at the same time, you can't. I don't think you can turn a blind eye to children dying on our border.
No, and that's part of the reason. One of the acts of what both the military does. People always think the military, and as well as I do as a veteran, is the combat war aspect of it. The military also has a huge humanitarian aspect, and we've, throughout our history of our service, Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, National Guard, Reserves, we really do strike a humanitarian effort and a humanitarian means. You look at a lot of our projects through the Army Corps of Engineers, we can affect these, and it will directly affect our troops, from being out there, providing security, providing medical assistance, providing transportation, providing the needs. And that's where I think our troops can have a positive aspect of it, really supporting our veterans and going out there, doing something for the greater good of humanity. And that's really what our military is there for. It's not, the combat is just one segment of what we do. Defending our nation isn't just defending it against the enemies, that try to cause harm, but the enemies that are trying to ruin our image, ruin our name, what we are as a nation. We are the greatest nation in the world for a reason. It's because we care about people. Yeah. We care about them, And there's ways that, to do that.
And we go, sometimes it seems like we go out of our way to not be like we should be. In other words, we go out of our way to conduct drone strikes on villagers. There are things we don't need to be doing, but as you pointed out, there are a lot of things that we do need to be doing that we aren't doing maybe as well as we should.
And you know what? We can only get better. We can do more and continue through our efforts to take on that humanitarian role. And that's how I view a lot of what our troops can do in this aspect, is the humanitarian aspect. And I really do see that going that way, because when I hear about these children, these families, and I see these images of kids being put in, really tough situations, none of those kids asked to be in that, call. But that's one of the roles that, our military can do a lot of good in there. And I think that is, we're uniquely qualified to do those things. I remember when I was overseas in Iraq, and we'd go into areas where there would be children that lost all their family, older family members, and we'd provide a lot for them. We'd build things. People don't hear always the good stuff of what we do, how we can rebuild hospitals, schools, water treatment facilities, and all that. There's a lot of great that our veterans do for the everyday citizen of the world, not just our nation, the citizens of the world. That is one aspect I think, is lost in the translation with the time of war that we're in right now.
Yeah, I think the media doesn't do a real good job covering those positive things that our troops are doing, not just, here on our border, but overseas, certainly.
Absolutely, and those aspects can be translated into, which we always talk about on our show, and we'll be talking about it in just a little bit on our Kilroy's Corner segment, is we talk about those skill sets can be transferred into job skills in the community. Job skills that if they can build homes, schools, water treatment facilities, all that in nations outside of our own borders, what could they do for our own nations inside our own borders? Brian, don't go anywhere. We're going to go into a segment called Kilroy's Corner with Mark Warner. We're going to talk about that and other things. Still want to chat with you a little bit more. When we return back, we got more Kilroy's conversation coming to you. XO, take us out. Hoorah. Brian, I know we got limited time with you. I still want to talk about a few other topics and kind of go back to something we were talking about a little bit earlier, is with Sergeant Bodog, as this progressive and this whole process goes about, what are some of the possibilities that he could face? Let's say he is ultimately convicted of desertion. What do you think that can and may look like if it does go that far?
That's a great question, but we really have to even take a step back from there and think about the decision that ultimately is going to be made by his commanders of whether to prosecute him at all.
Now, question, who has that, and I'm not so sure I understand this, so please, I'm relying heavily on your expertise.
Yep.
Who would have the command assigned to him? Would it be his former company commander, which I believe he's out of the military now? I saw him at a testimony on C-SPAN or something like that. They were interviewing him. Or is it his current command right now? Who actually, where does that jurisdiction actually lie?
There's so many moving parts to a military criminal case when it's in these early stages. And right now, the Major General, General Dahl, is doing...
He's the investigating general on this
right,
case.
He's been appointed as the investigating officer. He's doing what's called a 15-6 investigation.
And for those, I was going to ask you, for those of us who are not in the military, could you please tell them what a 15-6 is?
Essentially, it's a fact-finding investigation. It's the kind of investigation that would be done routinely. For example, if somebody takes the government vehicle and gets into an accident out in town, there's going to be a 15-6 investigation done to just find out what the facts were. It's not a criminal investigation, although many times they do lead to criminal investigations or criminal charges later on. But right now, the investigating officer is just gathering those facts. And to me, one of the things that surprised me recently is that apparently he has not yet re-interviewed those people who served with PFC Bergdahl there at the time in 2009. Now, they have already been interviewed. They were interviewed there at the time, but time does not affect witness testimony very well. There's a lot of media coverage over this. There's a big danger of people's stories getting affected by what they've seen since. So he I'm sure will hopefully very soon be re-interviewing those folks. But ultimately, once he finishes his investigation, he's going to determine whether he thinks that there was a desertion or whether it was just a mere unauthorized absence. He's going to forward his recommendations to probably the battalion commander of his original unit, and that person's going to make a decision whether to kind of keep it at his level or to send it up higher.
All righty. Well, Brian, I'd like to keep you on just for one more segment over here. I want to talk about that. We're going to take a quick commercial break to go over to do some commercials over here. But when we return back, we're going to talk with Brian Bouffard, Cami Dean, and Mark Warner, a little more Killworth Conversation, and some very interesting legal discussions over here. You're listening to Killworth Conversation on KVCE, AM 1160, Dallas Fort Worth, Minnesota. XO, take us out, and we'll be right back with some more Killworth Conversation.